Chapter 20. Troubling Bounty. Self-defense, you say? Ha! Of our annual net revenue, at least 40% is spent on defense in one form or another. Anything from having to invest into cybersecurity in order to avoid patent theft, buying battle cruisers in order to protect our shipping lines, or installing planetary defense-level armaments in order to protect our facilities. We spend so much on defense, we might as well be called a private military company at this point. Want to know what our company actually does? We produce and ship food, but after moving this close to the frontier, I no longer recognize my own company. Interview with the CEO of Universal Genetics, Greg Pentecost. Time for the real deal, Ronin said, then cracked his knuckles. This was his third day working the 3D printer and assembler, having chosen his first spaceship to be one of the smaller shuttle models out there, a Hemsway D8. It shouldn't take long to build. Being just under 3 meters long and 2 meters wide, the ship had just enough space for 2 people. Was it an old model? Yeah. Was it marketable? Most definitely not. But it was a good ship to practice with. Whilst attempting to ignore his headache, Ronin had first spent half a day figuring out how to print the components, then double that checking each and every one that came out with the multi-scanner. Now the only thing left was to put it all together. Fortunately, I don't have to use the alloy compressor this time. Ronin sighed in relief. For his first attempt at ship construction, this was already complicated enough. He linked up the unionette to the assembler control panel, then moved his hands over to 2 of the levers beside him. Next, bots began to whirl about as they moved around tech, and the assembly arms began to pick up the metal frames stacked off to the side. Smaller arms then moved in as they started welding the frames together. Slowly but surely, an outline of the ship began to materialize. As time passed, the ship's internal framework was completed, and Ronin moved on to the thruster. He wiped some sweat off his forehead, then looked down at the several organized and stored components. The anti-gravity module would provide levitation, but it could not provide speed. That's where the thruster came in. He moved his hands onto 2 new levers, then began to weld together the parts that were too large to print. The conical thruster slowly took shape, and when it was finished, Ronin fitted it onto the framework. He next connected a few pipes and cables to it. Should I put together the engine now? Ronin wondered. There were wires, cables, and electronics all over the assembly area. He didn't quite know where to go from here. Screw it. Let's just put together all the basic parts first. Ronin started by completing the parts that comprised the outer hull, adding in all the sockets needed for the electronics, gears, and hydraulics. He then installed the oxygen converter, the anti-gravity module, and the heating components. As he went on, he repeatedly walked over to the shuttle to adjust certain things himself. Assembling the shuttle couldn't be purely done by the factory assembler, and specific welds had to be done by hand. He had to do some of the wiring himself, as well as it required specialized tools not installed on the assembler. Ronin further noticed that he could tune the ship. He could increase its fuel efficiency, but its maximum speed would in turn be reduced. He could enhance the ship's steering sensitivity, but that would also reduce its robustness factor. Every change had a trade-off. This was all, of course, way out of his comfort zone at the moment. Right now, he was struggling just putting the thing together. Forget about optimizing it. But as he learned more, though, he did notice the different design solutions that had gone into making this thing. Much like when he grappled opponents in glory in the arena, there was a rhythm to the design. The materials picked, the workarounds chosen, the positioning of the wires, and so on. Every decision made when designing this ship gave the final design a distinct character. Ronin brought up the blueprint on a holoscreen. It feels like the people who made this ship wanted safety, but why did they then choose such a powerful fusion reactor only to tune it down after installing it? It's almost as if this ship is a combination of two different visions. Could it be that this ship had two different lead designers when it was made? There might be some room for him to play around with if he looked further into this. Forget it, Ronin thought, then shook his head. He suppressed a yawn, then looked tiredly towards the halfway constructed engine. He checked the time. 35 hours? He'd been at this almost all day, and he was starting to get a little dizzy. "I'll finish it later," he mumbled, then made his way over towards the bed. Right beside the VR chamber, the bed looked awfully out of place in the factory, but to Ronin, it was perfect. He'd also begun setting up an exercise rack, but between all of the work on his plate, he hadn't found the time to finish it yet. "I'll do it all later, but not today." He sluggishly got out, then collapsed onto the soft mattress, drifting off to sleep. Whoop, 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 whoop! A loud alarm boomed across the complex, and Ronin abruptly opened his eyes. He shot up to his feet, then began walking. He had to get out of his cell. Wait, he thought, then looked around the factory. This is not Exodon. Realizing his blunder, he quickly searched for a security guard in an attempt to figure out what was going on. With bright white light now blasting every inch of the building, it did not take long. "Hey you, what happened?" he shouted, waving a hand at the first guy he saw. The guard, clad in almost pure black, was distinctly visible under the bright light. "We are still not sure," the guard said. "We'll have to wait for an update from Chief Dmitri." Ronin immediately headed for the Hero Maker suit, then stepped into it. If this was an attack and they broke into the factory, he needed to be ready. As the seconds ticked by, Ronin positioned himself next to the main gate, waiting. In between the booming alarm, the sounds of turrets firing rang out, and a boom signaled a bomb going off. Ronin readied himself. The moment someone who was not supposed to be here walked in, he would attack. But who would make a move on his factory at a time like this? This place had turrets capable of downing military-grade ships. At some point, the alarm stopped, and he heard footsteps. A ping from his Uninet next informed him of an incoming message. "Guard Captain Dmitri. The threat has been neutralized." Ronin's shoulders sagged as he felt tension leave him. It was over. The gate then opened up, and a series of black-clothed men walked through. The large, burly man in the lead was Dmitri, distinguished by the two silver stars covering the chest area along his suit. "I see you've prepared yourself." "Good," the guard captain said. The burly man had short, blonde hair and, besides the stars, had a suit similar to the rest of the guards. Ronin popped open the face guard of the Hero Maker. "What happened?" "Someone attempted to break into the factory," the grizzled man said. "At this point, we've counted about 16 intruders." "Any clue as to what their motive is?" Ronin asked. The guard captain flashed a smile. "Why don't you ask them yourself?" Behind Dmitri, a couple of security guards dragged along a woman. The woman's head drooped towards the ground, and her body hung limply in between the two men. Likely, she was unconscious. Dmitri walked over towards the limp body, then brought out a small container which he opened beneath the woman's nose. With a quick jolt, she awoke, her eyes wide in terror. "Smelling salts," Dmitri commented as he closed the container again. "Where's my men?" the woman screamed. "What have you done to them?" Dmitri looked at Ronin, then made a gesture where he dragged a finger across his neck. "So she's the only one of them left, huh?" Ronin walked up to the disheveled figure, staring down at her as he spoke in a harsh voice. "Everyone's dead. Now tell me, do you want to end up like your friends? Or do you wish to live?" The woman's look of terror increased. "Dead! Oh no, Ablo. My Hans." She began shaking her head back and forth. "You attacked my factory," Ronin said. "I'm in my full right to put you down, but I could also hand you over to the planetary guard right now. You have a real shot at life here, so tell me, why did you attack?" The woman glared up at Ronin, and something seemed to change in her. "It's you. We came here for you, you bastard. You're worth 3 million credits, and it's only a matter of time before someone claims it." Ronin frowned. 3 million? That's 3 times the amount it was before. "It seems Spectre isn't done with me yet." The woman looked to the factory guards. "We can split the bounty, you know. He's right here. It only takes a single shot. Even better, you can take all of the credits for yourselves. 3 million is enough to live well for a lifetime." Ronin's heart skipped a beat. Was she trying to turn his own security guards against him? "Ha ha ha," Dmitri laughed. "Our previous employers had a bounty of 10 million. Listen, lady, in this business, you don't live long when you start taking bounties." He then glanced at Ronin. "What do you want to do with her?" He probably said that more for my sake than for the woman's. Either way, it doesn't seem like my guards will betray me for 3 million. As for this girl, though... Ronin raised a metal hand to his chin, then thought it over. She had done what he asked, but she just tried to entice his guards against him. He thought back on the fat, belching woman back in District 101. He should probably kill this girl. It's what his instincts told him to do. But then again, those instincts weren't entirely his anymore, now were they? "Give her to the planetary guard," he finally said. Dmitri made a curt nod, then ordered the woman to be moved out of the building. "Take it from someone who's seen a lot of this, but if you can, you should get rid of that bounty on your head," the guard captain said. "Yeah," Ronin agreed, "and thank you for stopping them this time." "I was only doing my job," chuckled Dmitri. "Well, thanks anyways," Ronin said. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I think I'll need some time to rest." He waved the captain goodbye, then headed over towards his bed. Exiting his suit, he plopped down on the mattress. There was no way he'd be able to get any sleep now. Hopefully, Nagata would find something on Argus soon. If Ronin was going to use Argus to catch Spectre, though, he might have to use stealth. The Potentia panorama could help with this, but his mind palace was still in no condition to be opening another gate. I should probably speed that up. Although most of the larger rifts in his mind had been fixed, there was still a lot of work to be done. Ronin closed his eyes and entered the mental spaceship. He then gazed over at the guardians from the battle soul technique. "To me," he said, and they rushed over, the first one being the new grappling guardian he'd made. The little guy might still be weak, but it was more responsive than the others, and it was easier to connect to. It probably had something to do with this guardian being truly his. As Ronin began sealing up the various cracks in his mind, he thought about the bounty. If Spectre had raised the bounty once, he could do so again. Dmitri had said his previous employers had a bounty of 10 million. But what if it had been 20 million? How high would the bounty have to be before Dmitri decided to go back on his words and kill him? Chapter 21. Transformed Employee. Whilst Ronin was working to fill out a particularly tricky crack in his mindscape, the sound of a ping rang out. "It's morning already?" he thought, surprised. That ping was a warning he'd set, signaling the beginning of the upcoming academy practical. After over a month away, it was finally time to return. Ronin stuffed the black and purple academy suit into a bag, then stepped into the much safer Hero Maker suit. Walking out onto the runway, he called down a shuttle, and as one of the flying ships above came down, he entered the airlock. As he did, though, he was met by a couple of intense eyes. Sir, where to?" the pilot asked, trying and failing not to stare at the golden codpiece. "Ironglade Space Force Academy," replied Ronin. "And yes, I know it's golden and I know it sticks out, but please don't stare at it." Sorry about that," the pilot coughed. After a few more glances towards the codpiece, the pilot finally got his act together and the ship took off. In short order, the ship then flew across the city, landing on the academy plateau as a self-conscious Ronin walked out amongst the students. "Long time no see, Mr. Maximus. Quite the haircut you've got yourself. It must have been quite the business trip," a voice spoke from behind him. Ronin had never heard that voice before. It was smooth, deep, and had a melodic ring to it. "Who?" He turned around, spotting Simons. Startled by the big man, Ronin continued looking, scanning the surrounding students as he searched for the man behind the voice. "Sir, are you okay? Your eyes are flickering around like crazy." Ronin did a double take. There it was again. That deep voice. What's this? It came out the moment Simons moved his mouth? Could it really be? "Yeah, it was quite the trip," Ronin said, his eyes now fixed squarely on Simons's lips. "But your eyebrows, why did you remove them as well?" He was now certain. It was Simons. "Before we discuss my lack of eyebrows," Ronin broke in, "what happened to your voice?" "Oh, you noticed." "Noticed? You've suddenly developed the voice of an angel. How could I not notice? I even doubted it was you." The contract for working at Maximus Solutions stated that it requires the employee to have an ability to communicate clearly. I'm not the type of man who will gamble on whether or not I get to keep my job. From voice coaches to liposuction, I did whatever it took to maximize the clarity of my voice. I guess you could call it a Maximus solution, so to speak, Simon said, chuckling at his own joke. Liposuction. Ah, now I see it. The bulging neck, which had earlier been fused seamlessly into the rotund body, was now gone. In its place was a neck that looked more like Ronin's now, which on the bigger Simon's did not fit at all. But Simon's, isn't liposuction going a little far? You might not know how these contracts work, but that clause is a tripwire. The company put it there in order to make sure they could easily fire me at their own leisure. No strings attached. I've spoken with the family lawyer regarding this, and there is no doubt. Simons looked almost proud of himself as he said it. But the issue was, it was Ronin who'd added that clause to the contract, and that had definitely not been his intention when he added it. He just hoped Simons would fix his lisp. What about you, Ronin? Why did you remove your eyebrows? Ronin made an awkward cough. There was no way he was going to tell Simons about Exodon. I was told it would help develop our business relations with some of our new potential customers. He lied. But before all of that, what do you say to a little team building? We should celebrate our new jobs after all. Team building? Simons questioned, a little skeptical. Ronin grinned. I'm thinking we eat out, You know, a fancy restaurant, a full buffet, no limits. We can eat and drink to our heart's content. And the best thing is, it will all be on the company's bill. Simons perked up at that. Well, I guess I could set aside some time. Good. Ronin laughed. They continued on, chatting as they made their way towards the hangar, Ronin receiving plenty of stares along the way. As they approached a tree patch about halfway there, however, something seemed to change on the plateau. Almost every single student around stopped in their tracks and began looking up towards the sky. Ronin looked up as well, spotting a ship. What in the world? The ship was beautiful and was clearly not meant for commuting. It looked more like something built for arenas that pushed both the pilot and the ship to the limit. It looked like a carefully crafted machine of power. Was it a space racer? A pit fighter, maybe? Who's that? Ronin asked in wonder. You really don't know? You really do live under a rock, don't you? Simons lowered his voice, then moved his head closer to Ronin's. That's Cadet Hurricane. He's said to be an unrivaled pilot genius, only seen once a century. The shuttle landed, and the surrounding students swarmed around it, forming a crowd. A red-haired youth next walked out of the vehicle, and several campus guards ran up beside the youth to hold back the excited mass of people. Men were shouting for autographs, and girls were blushing as he moved. There had to be at least a couple hundred students circling this man. He could have graduated by now, Simons commented, but the academy held him back. He's only been here for a year, but he's already better than most graduates. Ronin was also a genius, but the only crowd around him was Simons. Pilots really were a different thing altogether. The red-haired youth waved his hand, and a chorus of shrieks from the girls in the crowd followed. A different thing indeed, Ronin thought. The two entered the hangar, then lined up with the rest of the students. A couple of minutes later, as Ronin was switching into the academy suit, Professor Ravurus Ravent walked in. Today we'll be working on airlock configuration, the professor began. In the vacuum of space, if you're the slightest millimeter off in your design, you can vent out the whole crew. So precision is everything. Ronin could swear he saw the older man smile when he mentioned the word precision. Now remember, the air seals are the most important thing to get right. But if you can't even open the door, I will fail you. Ravurus went on for a bit more, and when he finished, a number of bots brought out a series of airlock components. Ronin teamed up with Simons, and it didn't take long before they got into the groove of things. He'd missed 3 of these practicals so far, but he'd gotten a message from the academy on how to rectify the issue a few days back. In fact, many of the students had been ambushed by the difficulty of the first exercise, something the whole class had corrected for while Ronin was gone. But Ronin had something they didn't. A factory. Ronin and Simons, that is, the two baldies, first got the air seals working properly, but the electronics on one of the airlocks took some extra work. Anastasia, as always, was the first to finish, raking in the extra points of the course. Before the 5-hour mark, everyone was done with their airlock and the class started leaving the hangar. Ronin was also about to leave but was stopped by the professor. Mr. Maximus, you will need to stay behind, Ravurus said. Serves him right, one of the students snorted. It was bad before when he never showed up in class, but at least he showed up for the practicals. But now, the slum rat's even skipping those. The haughty student wasn't alone in his sentiment, and Ronin saw several others nodding in agreement. Apparently, he still wasn't popular with the class. Ronin brushed it off. They knew nothing of his circumstances, and if they were going to act like that, they could forget about getting employed at his company in the future. their loss. After the last few students left, Ravurus Ravent pulled out an electric brush, adjusting his hair and mustache before proceeding further to pull out yet another, new brush, which he started using to brush his uniform. After he was done, the professor was then about to pull out a disinfectant bottle, but Ronin quickly broke in before he could begin using it. "Professor, I assume you held me back to catch up on the exercises I missed while in prison?" "Yes, but also not quite," Ravurus said in his usual monotone voice. Pointing towards Ronin, he continued, "As you know, you've been signed into the genius track now, meaning you've got double the workload. We might increase it more later, though, if you can handle it." "I can get even more work?" Ronin's eyes shot up. They must be pushing geniuses as hard as possible in order to maximize their chances of moving up towards the higher systems. "Double the normal amount of work is more than enough," Ronin hastily said. With the company and the Potentia Panorama, he had more than enough work at the moment. The last thing he needed now was more of it. "Anyways, you'll be doing an extra exercise with me here after the normal ones from now on. And sorry for keeping your new status in the Academy secret. None of your fellow students know you're currently in the Genius program, and we'd like to keep it that way. To be honest, I'm actually kind of grateful for that." Ronin sighed. "There's enough heat on me already. The last thing I need is for an assassin to sneak up on me whilst I'm handing out autographs or something." "The bounty?" Ravurus asked, raising an eyebrow. "We here at the Academy can actually help with that." "Really? How?" In answer to his question, the professor's eyes began moving, working on something with his implant before making a slight swiping motion with his right hand. Ronin's implant pinged, indicating an incoming new message. He opened it. A contract? As he read further down the document, however, he quickly became discouraged. According to this contract, if he sought protection, he'd have to give away any and all ownership and intellectual property to the Academy for the next 10 years. In addition, the Academy would have the right to dictate his life, down to what he was even allowed to eat from now on. "This is a slave contract. I can't take this," Ronin said, shaking his head. This was an incredible overreach by the Academy. Ravurus Ravent simply nodded, giving no indication to whether or not he was happy with Ronin's decision. Without missing a beat, he began the next practical. "Today we'll be working on heat transfer systems. Getting rid of heat in space has always been a bit of an annoyance in spaceship design. Now let's start off easy and install a couple of radiators.